All right, so today we're going to be looking at rearranging systems of linear equations, or less formally, we're just going to learn how to rearrange an expression which has an unknown variable in it. So for example, just a pronumeral like a or x, trying to get that by itself, or trying to get an expression in terms of a certain variable that we're looking for. So we're going to start off quite basic when we're going to be doing these. The main thing that we need to be thinking about is when we used to do order of operations, it would go BOMDAS. Some people might have done BODMAS, same thing, or they might have done BIMDAS. Basically, all that's standing for is B for brackets, so anything inside brackets we solve first. O for order, so something to the power, and that's the same with I. I means indices, so something to the power. Both of those, if you've got something to the power, we solve that first after brackets, and then we would go along with M and D, which are multiplication and division. Both of those happen at the same time. So if I've got just a string of different multiplications and divisions, I go from left to right, solving whichever one comes first. And same with addition and subtraction, which are last. They are their equals. So we would also go left to right for that as well. The process of rearranging is a little bit different though. We still focus on BOMDAS, but we think since we're pulling stuff apart, we're not actually solving. We do all of that in reverse order. So we can start thinking of SADMOB, which is BOMDAS backwards. So we work with addition and subtraction first. We work with multiplication division next. Any powers we solve for those or rearrange for those. And lastly, we do brackets. So I'm going to leave that at the top of, let me just move some stuff on the screen. I'm going to leave that at the top for now. So that way we know what processes and stuff we need to take first. So let's get into doing a question. So first, let's start off with an easy one. We'll go with just x plus 7 equals 10. Now, we might not need a lot of our strategies that we're going to approach with this, because people just look at it and go, well, something plus 7 equals 10, that something must be 3. Great. Nice and easy to be able to solve for that. But we also need to be able to show some working to develop that approach, because it's not going to stay this easy forever. We're going to get some questions that are going to have lots and lots of actions that you have to take. It's not just a one order approach. We might have a two-step approach, and we might have to do even more than that later on. So we're going to try and show all about working for all of these. I'm going to do a question, I'll scrap it, and I'll move on to the next question. So if you are looking at this and go, I already know how to do the processes of it, skip forward through the video a little bit, and you hopefully find in a different expression that's a little bit more challenging for you. So what we need to think of is SADMOB. So we look and we say, okay, we want to get x by itself. Fortunately with these, we don't really need to think about too many order of operations, because we only have one, and it's saying plus 7. The way that we're trying to end at is we're trying to isolate that variable by itself. So we're wanting something that looks like this, x equals, and we get an answer. The only way we can do that is isolating the x by itself and removing everything else. So the thing that we have is plus 7. Plus 7 is in the way, and we need to remove that or rearrange that to the other side of the equation. So how do we do that? We do the reverse of the process that it tells us, and we do that to both sides. So if I was just to multiply a side by 2, it wouldn't really make much sense unless I multiplied both sides by 2. So that's where we always have the thing, whatever happens to one side, we have to do to the other. So we should be used to something like that. And that's the same approach that we're going to have to do with rearranging. So we've got plus 7. The opposite of plus, or the opposite of addition, is its counterpart, which is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 7, and whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side, as so. Now, these aren't underneath each other. This is just demonstrating an approach that most people would not demonstrate. They would just go x equals, and they would have this line of working underneath. They would have x equals 10 take 7. So don't think that the structure that I've drawn it is what's appropriate. What's appropriate is noticing why did I bother doing that. Positive 7 take 7 is 0. It cancels itself out. So you can see on this left-hand side of the equation, we don't have a 7 anymore. It's only x. On the right-hand side of the equation, I've got the rest of that formula. I've got 10 take 7, and I've written it out as we normally would in a straight line. And then we can finish this off. 10 take 7, what's that? It's 3. And we work our way back to what we knew from the starting, something plus 7 equaling 10. It had to be 3. We've now got some working to show our way there. So, same sort of approach applies for everything. If I've got a take 7, I would add 7 onto both sides. If I've got a multiplication, I would do a division. And if I had a division, I'd do a multiplication. So all of those things are quite easy in the approach that they're going to do. If you are having trouble with those, please go back and have a look through some of the examples that are on the OneNote. And if you're having more trouble, contact me and we'll have a bit of a work through another problem. But I'm going to skip straight to a 2-step problem instead. And you'll hopefully see some of those approaches happening in there. I'm just going to do other stuff as well. So let's clear all this and we'll work on a problem that's got 2 steps in the approach. So we're going to start with, we'll go with x divided by 4, take 8 equals, what's a good number? We'll go with 16. No, that won't be a good number. Let's go with 14. Conflict in my head, decided to go with it. Let's go with 16. All right, so x divided by 4, take 8 equals 16. So straight away, this one might not be as straightforward to be able to solve with your head. We're going to be needing something here that equals 24, because if we take 8 from that, then we'll get 16. So we'd have to try and work backwards and go, okay, well, something divided by 4, that's going to be 24. How can I solve that? It might be a little bit harder for most people to be able to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to show all of our working to be able to get there. And that's why I took that approach on the first question I did of how to do the working, because now when we're approached with something that's a little bit harder, we've at least got something in our tool bag to be able to work it out. So our first step this time is, well, what do I need to approach first? And that is, let's look at SADMOB. Let's go from left to right, as so, and work out which bits need to be done first. So do I have a subtraction? Yes, I do. This is the thing that I want to work on first to try and rearrange the equation. Best way of considering it, if you're going to forget what SADMOB is, anything that is attached to the pronumeral or the x, you should do last. So the 8 is not attached to it, so we should do that first. So opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to do that to both sides as such. And I'm only going to be adding this sort of stuff, this red stuff, onto these so people have an idea of what is actually happening. Eventually you'll get to a stage where everything that's in blue is the stuff that you'll be concentrating on when you're doing it yourself, and you won't actually have to show all of that other working on the inside. So I've got x divided by 4 is now 16 plus 8, and you can see that I have removed the take 8 and plus 8 because they cancel each other out. That's the whole purpose of this, is to try and get some stuff that we can cancel. So we've got x divided by 4 equals 16 plus 8. I know that 16 plus 8 is 24, so we're going to replace that with 24. The only reason why I'm doing that and not showing the working that I have in between is because I'm going to run out of space. I'd rather you keep the blue line and do this as another step that's underneath. Now, we need to start thinking about what do I have next. So I work my way across SADMOB and go, okay, no additions. I do have a division though. I have a division by 4. So my focus is going to be, how do I get rid of division of 4? And we got to think, okay, what's the opposite of division? We look at next to division, it's multiplication. So that means I'm going to have to multiply both sides by 4, like so. All right. So if I have something that is times by 4 and then divided by 4, it's like I've done nothing at all. So the times 4 and the divided by 4 cancel each other out, leaving me with a nice x equals 4 times 24. Now, the reason why I had the conflict in my head before is because I wanted to make sure that this thing would end up being a nice whole number and something that could work a little bit easier. And it is, which is great. Don't always jump for your calculator, especially when you're in a position like this. We can think 4 times 20 is 80, and 4 times 4 is 16. 80 plus 16, 96. So x must have been 96. So we're solving a two-step approach by showing our working as we go through, cancelling out certain parts, and working our way down to a final answer for x. And we can always check our solution by substituting our answer in. So that would be our last step, would be to check. I'm not going to have enough space, so I'm going to have to get rid of the stuff that I've got here. Underneath yours, though, we will have a, let's go with a bit of a smaller font than that. Let's go with check by substitution. Like that. And we are going to substitute our number in, and the number that we got was 96. So on the line underneath, I'm going to say, well, since x equals 96, we're going to check via substitution. We're going to substitute it in. So where x was, I'm going to put 96. I'm going to write everything out to the same. Equals 16. And we're going to think 96 divided by 4. Now, if you're going to have trouble with that, then you can go use a calculator. That's fine. But 96 divided by 4 is 24. So we can go 24, take 8, equals 16. If I do 24 take 8, I end up with 16. And my right-hand side is also 16. So I can say that the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. And we have bound the value for x, which is therefore x is 96, and we have justified that we absolutely know that it's 96. So this is a nice two-step approach, and you'll be finding that you'll have a lot of different operations that you'd have to do. We did have a subtraction and a division in this one, but you might have multiplication, you might have addition, you might have square roots, you might have squares, we might have brackets to be able to solve for. So what I'm going to do to finalize this thing up is I'm going to pick one problem that's going to have a whole bunch of different steps in it. And hopefully it might help as a bit of an example of where you could end up with a certain problem. I'm going to start all the way off to the left, so I can make sure that I've got enough room this time. I'm going to have brackets, and I'm going to say 6x plus 8. I'm even going to put a times by 4 at the front of this thing. And yeah, we'll leave it there and we'll go equals, and I'll just say we'll go with 7. So now I've got a lot more stuff to it, and I could add some additional things. I could have had a squared that's up here, which might have made the problem a little bit more difficult. But since I've made some pretty poor number choices, I'm not going to have a squared in this one. So we've now got additional stuff, and I'm going to follow the same approach that I've been doing beforehand, and that is I'd go through SADMOB. Do I have a subtraction or addition? I do have an addition. The only problem is it's inside brackets, and BOMDAS says brackets needs to be done last. So I can't do that yet. So I keep working my way along. Do I have a division? No. Do I have a multiplication? Yes, I do. So I'm going to have to get rid of a multiplication of 4, and I'm going to have to do that by dividing by 4 on both sides. And we're going to end up with 4's cancelling out, leaving me with 6x plus 8. Since there's nothing else on that line anymore, I can get rid of the brackets, and that just means we're going to be doing the brackets. Next, I'm going to have 7 divided by 4, and I'm going to continue working through to the next step. And now we're back to a problem like the 2 order one that we had before. So I go with, okay, I've got SAD mob, I've got an addition, and I've got a multiplication. Addition comes first. I have to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So I'm going to do that, which is going to leave me with 6x and 7/4. Take 8, which is the same as saying 6x equals 1 3/4. Take 8, which is the same as saying 6x equals negative 6 1/4, like so. So a little bit of rearranging that I've had to do. I've had to change my improper fraction to a mixed fraction by saying how many 4s are in 7. There's 1 and there's 3 remainder. And then I'm taking 8 away. And the best way that we can approach that is we can just do 8 and take away the 1 3/4, and whatever we're left with is what would be on the other side. So we're going to have to go with what is our next step. Okay, all we've got left to isolate x by itself is a 6. It's currently times by. So I have to do the opposite of that, and I have to divide by 6, like so. And that leaves me with x equals negative 6 1/4 divided by 6. And we can solve this many different ways. And the way that we're going to try and solve this is by going x equals, I'm going to split this thing back out into different fractions. I'm going to say negative 6 1/4. And again, this is if you don't want to use a calculator yourself. This is a different approach that you can do. Negative 6/4, and it's timesing by 1/6 instead of dividing by 6. It's the same thing. If I went onto my calculator and times by 1/6, it's the same as going to be dividing by 6. This is just a way that we can keep it in fractions term without having to do all of the work of putting in lots of decimals and knowing how to round. So this way it encases all of the error that we're going to have. So I'm going to turn this mixed fraction back into an improper fraction. I'm going to say, well, I've got 6/4 that I've already made up. That means I must have had 24/4. And plus this little one, that means I must have 25/4. So I've got negative 25/4 times by 1/6. And our fractions just say I multiply the tops together and I multiply the bottoms together. So I've got negative 25th over 24. Your answers do not have to come out to be really nice every single time. So for this one, when I'm looking at this problem, 4 times by, in brackets, 6 times x plus 8 equals 7. What's our value of x? Our value of x is negative 25 over 24. Something very weird, but unfortunately, that's how some of these problems are going to go sometimes. You're not going to have nice whole integers coming out, or negative integers and positive integers. We're going to have some stuff with some messy looking decimals. And the best way to approach that is to keep it as a fraction if you are really good at your fractions. And it's recommended that you just keep practicing them. This is not an approach that just comes overnight. It's practice, practice, practice. So we've used our steps of using the opposite of BOMDAS or SADMOM to rearrange a formula or rearrange an equation. So what I want you to do on your own, I'd like you to go through and try the practice questions and then try the independent work, and any problems you have, don't hesitate to contact me to try and work through some problems, and I'll give you help.